is Sarabjit. I manage this group Business Analyst Success Path that you're watching this video on, and I'd like to welcome you. So today's topic again is what does your first day or week look like as a business analyst in a new role, right? So this training applies to those that are transitioning to the BA role for the very first time. It also applies if you already have business analyst experience but are going from one business domain to the next business domain. So for example, if your primary experience is in banking, but now you're transitioning into the healthcare industry, there's a shift and a change in industry. So this video still applies to you. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so how do you show up? What initially I thought about, just doing this training on your first day, but it doesn't really help as much to talk about just what your first day looks like. So I expanded it a little bit, and now this is going to be about the first week as a business analyst. What does your first week look like as a business analyst? First, let's talk about how do you show up for your first day. So now you've gone through a series of interviews, you know about the organization at this point, you've talked to a few people, at least maybe most likely your hiring manager and some of the leadership, and you kind of sort of know about the organization, the business, as well as some high level information on the projects. But that's really not enough, right? For you to have everything that you need to know. Typically, first days can be very, very stressful. So I just put together some things for you to be mindful of on what to do on your first day. Again, this is non-COVID related. If you are starting your first job as a business analyst in the COVID realm, which is most likely going to be remote, so then all of these things, interactions would happen obviously through meetings and phone calls and not in person. But for this training, let's pretend that everything is a-okay in the world and that any new positions that you're starting, you're showing up to work. So how do you really show up for work on your first day as a business analyst? I want you guys to eat breakfast and have coffee, right? Which means that your first week really is going to be high energy. It's when people are going to be watching you. So you need to have that energy and that stamina to be visible and to be seen. So eat breakfast, have coffee, whatever it takes for you to, have that energy to be around and to be, smiling and to show up and put your best foot forward. You always want to bring your notepad, notebook, pen, highlighter, right? Because typically the first day they're still trying to set you up. You may not have access to a laptop, computer, or anything. So in that scenario, you will still be meeting people. They'll still be talking to you about stuff. So it would serve you well to bring some sort of notepad or notebook, pen, and highlighters, just so you're not struggling to find something to write on. Once you do show up to work, they always have a supply closet or a supply area where you can get notebooks, but typically let that not be your first question for your team, right? Like, where do I get my notebook? Make sure you bring something on your first day. I would recommend number 3, don't bring lunch from home, right? This is what I've done for the first week. I just try not to bring any food from home, meaning you can bring snacks or whatever, but lunch is an opportunity where you can get to meet your team members, go out to lunch with them, learn more about them, and learn more about the team and the organization that you're in. So use this opportunity when you're new, especially to say, hey, where do I grab lunch? Would you mind showing me around, right? So that's one way that you can get to learn and know people. I know for me, typically, I would recommend, just don't bring meals from home. Try to meet your team members as much as possible, spend time with them, learn from them. Number 4, have lots of confidence. As I said, your first day, your first week, you are being watched, right? And that's why it's a little nerve-wracking. And I understand that, but it's part of the game. When anybody new joins your organization, you're probably doing the same thing. You're watching them to see how they interact with people, what type of questions they ask. So, just be confident. Bring out your extrovert side, right? What that means is when you're starting a new role as a business analyst, you're going to be doing lots of communication with the business teams as well as the IT teams. It depends on, which side of the house you're on, whether you're on the IT side or the business side, but you need to be that extrovert that goes out and, when you're meeting somebody, shake your hand, like a firm handshake. Eye contact is really, really important. Do all the things on the next slide, which is meet and greet. So If you're not doing that in person, make sure you're understanding who you're talking to, who the org structure looks like, and that you're scheduling lots of meetings and doing video conference, right? Zoom and lots of tools make it possible for you guys to interact and see each other. And I think as being part of like a human experience, we thrive on interactions, right? So make sure that if you're doing this during the COVID, you're working from remote, make sure your video is enabled so people can see you, have a sense of you. And then last one, I said most importantly, arrive early on your first day. You don't want to be late. You don't want people looking for you. Typically, before you show up to work, you know who you're contacting at the security desk. You should have a name and a contact number when they come downstairs to get you, because you don't have the security clearance first. They will come get you. So again, your first day is most likely going to be about getting set up. What your first day looks like is you're probably going to be spending most of your day getting set up in your work area. You're probably going to be assigned to complete lots of compliance trainings, like HR related and, around sexual assault and all that stuff. So all the compliance training that is going to be required, typically they want you to complete it on your first day. So that's out of the way. You're getting to meet your internal team. You'll have lunch with them, and they'll typically give you documentation to read. So this is your first day. Again, you're just most of the time you're going to be spending just getting set up. Your desktop, your laptop, your security clearance, photo ID, all the usual typical things that you do, and you'll probably be also meeting your internal team. Here, what I did is put together a list of questions to ask during your first week. From your contact person, could be your manager, could be somebody else. Whoever is going to be your manager, you want to understand the reporting structure, meaning who are you reporting to? Let's say if you're on the IT teams, you want to understand who your manager reports to and who you report to and who your peers are. And that becomes really important because if you have that understanding of who your peers are, you can maybe go to them and ask them for help or understanding of the business. Your team members typically are working on not maybe same projects or maybe similar projects. So you could work very closely with your coworkers in your first few weeks to get up to speed, and also your manager. And then it also becomes important to understand who your manager reports to, because then you understand the hierarchy of things and you kind of have a firm understanding of the types of projects that your teams may be getting. And then you also want to understand the IT team org structure, and that becomes important because you need to know who to go to, right? If you're on the business side, you have business systems analysts on the IT teams. So based on the projects you're working on, you may need to interact most likely with the business systems analyst or the dev team. Critical to understand the org structure for many, many reasons. And for me, I always ask for that because it helps me get my grounding on who I'll be working with in this organization. I also ask for intros for both on the business and IT teams. I want to know who I'll be working with. Critical that you do that through intros instead of just meeting people in meetings for the very first time. And that's also another place that you will be meeting. Lots of the people that you'll be working with is through meetings, but I usually ask for those introductions because I like to make my first impression as a person and not just as a team member. The fourth thing is to you'll be asked ask your manager what projects are you going to be working on and what the ongoing project list looks like. So lots of times many teams have huge list of projects that they are on the backlog. So request and have an understanding of what it is that you'll be working on, but then also what the backlog looks like. And then number 5 is similar to number 4. What is the typical progression of projects? And for me, I like to know how projects are coming to our team or our group, just so that you have a firm understanding of how baked they are when they get to you as a business analyst. Number 5 is understanding typical progression of projects. And this would be how you would frame that, as you would probably go to your manager or, in a conversation, just say, hey, how do projects come to our team? And it's important to understand that, at least for me, because I want to know, are they thinking about these projects before they're getting assigned to the business analyst? Or is a business analyst doing that research piece before projects get initiated? And lots of the teams that I've worked with, or lots of the companies that I've worked for, have a pre-project, like pre-charter sessions, right? So projects are coming from many different areas, right? For example, projects could be coming from the accounting team or the compliance team or any other teams. So they're vetted and they're understood. Understanding how the projects are coming through to the team and are getting assigned to you is important for those reasons. So you have a firm understanding of how solid those projects are. So if you hear something like, we've have a project charter already, we've identified the high level scope and timelines, then you can assume that this project is pretty solid and will stay around. What happens is, if those things aren't defined, if you don't have a project charter, you don't understand the high level timelines, or has been identified, or the scope hasn't been identified, typically lots of those projects fall through the cracks, meaning that if it's not a firm project, and leadership is not aware of it, those projects typically don't get done. So having that understanding, you kind of know, based on the list of projects that you're given, which ones to spend more time on and which ones maybe are nice to haves that that have been listed, but there's really no formal project for that. You want to ask for past documentation, and that's really, really helpful. You're working on a project and maybe you're working on an enhancement of that project. It's understanding, it's a good way to have a baseline of what those requirements are and how those projects were implemented, whether they were in waterfall or agile. Most of the companies are moving towards agile. You probably will know what environment you'll be in through interviews, but still, even if you're in agile now and the past documentation is from waterfall, it still helps to understand the functionality and everything that the project has gone through before it's now handed over to you. Number 7, ask for company templates. All companies have templates. Request your peers or your manager for templates for the BRD, or if you're in the agile environment, access to tools like Jira, if you're using Jira at your company, just to get everything that you need to be successful. Number 8, ask who the key players are. SMEs means subject matter experts. Who are the SMEs in your area, right? So as a business analyst, you could ask your manager, you could ask your peers, who are the subject matter experts, right? Who are the most local people that we'll be working with? Who is the management that's influential, right? And leadership. There's people in organizations that don't have a management title, but are the ones that can go into a room and make decisions and move the project forward. So you want to identify who those people are. And most of the time, if you ask your peers and team members, they will tell you, right? So just in your first week, I would say in your first month, you should be asking lots of questions. You should be listening. You should not be talking so much per se. I don't know if you guys have read a book called My First 100 Days, and it's from a person who took a leadership role and brought on to do some pretty massive things. In my experience and my career, the first 90 days or the first 100 days, he doesn't provide too much input or direction or conclusions, because he's trying to learn the organization. And you guys as business analysts should do the same. I also have been on many teams. You'll get exposed to the politics sooner or later. It is very, very helpful to stay quiet, not quiet in terms of not understanding the business or the ITs. Don't give out judgment on stakeholders, on teams, on politics, or anything like that. Just listen and learn what you're there to learn and do. So the last number 9, is related to you understanding the line of business where you've landed. Let's say you're now in the healthcare industry, or you're in the capital markets industry. Ask your SMEs, ask your peers, ask your manager on how you can learn more about that industry. There's always lots of stuff on Google. Make Google your best friend. There's also lots of internal trainings that they'll have. There's lots of PowerPoint slides that they've probably put together already. You want to leverage all the assets that they have and utilize them. But if you don't ask for them, you won't get them. I always, tell people, if I'm going into a new industry, the only way that you'll be successful in your role is if you understand the business, who you're supporting, you get along with the business stakeholders, and you can document well. All those three things, if you can do well, you'll succeed. Asking where you should learn more about the industry. This is all about what things that you should have accomplished in your first week. So your first week's checkoff list, right, is going to be, you should by the first week know who the key players are. At this point, by the end of your first week, you should have been invited to many meetings. That's typically how you get your work done, is by meeting with stakeholders, meeting with your IT teams. So by the first week, you should have attended several meetings already. You should have identified who the key players are. You should have started to learn about the business, right? As you're understanding what the business is, create workflow diagrams of your understanding and present them to your manager or to your peers, just so you have a firm understanding, right? This is not for you to present to your business folks, but just so you have a firm understanding of how the business works, right? Like how the business model works. You should have a list of your own projects. You should already be invited to weekly meetings or to your project meetings. Meet with internal team for lunch or coffee. Invite stakeholders for meet and greet, preferable coffee, right? So as you're identifying, who your stakeholders are, who you'll be working with, or even on the IT teams, invite them for coffee, or schedule half an hour on their calendar and say, I'm a new team member and I'd like to understand the project a little bit more. And that way you can understand or meet them as a human being. Again, for me, in my approach of managing projects and doing projects, I always try to understand and meet with my stakeholders and my IT teams and my business teams. If you can get along with the people that you're working with, A, your work becomes a lot more enjoyable. B, they'll help you understand if you're struggling. And C, typically you're spending 90% of your work life at work. So why not make it enjoyable? I like to learn about kids, or how long they've been at the organization, how long they've been in this industry, something that they would recommend for me to do as a new person on the team. So those are the things that you can ask your stakeholders, just so they can help you get familiarized with the industry, with the company, and in your role. So those are some of the things that I've used in my past experience when I do meet and greets with my stakeholders, is to understand who they are, B, about the organization, and C, about the industry. And the last one, second to last, is listen, listen, and listen. If you haven't read that book, I would recommend you read it. I think it's called My First 100 Days or something. And what that means is, just politics is part of every organization. Some companies do, there's very minimal politics, and in some companies there's lots and lots of it, and you will be exposed to most of it pretty quickly. From my standpoint, don't judge or provide any perspective. You're too new to do that at this point. Just listen. As you're listening and as you're in your team meetings, you will understand who those key players are if you haven't already identified them. You will understand the political plays that are there. Most of the time, stakeholders are wanting to push, their requirements, and that's okay. Your job is to understand what those requirements are, to document them as best as you can, and then get prioritization from leadership or key stakeholders and push those projects forward. Feel free to post them in the group, and I will get back to them when I see that you guys have any questions. And then again, please let me know what other topics we should talk about. I try to do these weekly live sessions each week, but I need topics to prepare for these topics. So leave comments on any other, questions that you may have, or any topics you'd like me to talk about.